This is Mixology, the intersection of customer education and customer marketing as the scale engines to customer success. I'm Kristine Kukich, and along with Shannon Howard, we talk about how intertwined these two disciplines are in supporting customer success. Our topic for this episode is building a strategy that helps you solve problems. We'll talk about this with a Vieux Carré, a creation originating in New Orleans that mixes ingredients like the city mixed heritage in its early days. If you're following along, here's what you'll need. 3/4 ounce rye whiskey, 3/4 ounce cognac, 3/4 ounce sweet vermouth, 2 teaspoons Benedictine, 4 dashes of Angostura bitters, and you can garnish with a brandied cherry or a lemon twist. In terms of instructions, basically add all of the liquid ingredients into a mixing glass filled with ice, stir until chilled, and then pour it into a rocks glass. Garnish with your cherry or your lemon twist. And let's get started. So this episode is really about the strategy and vision. How do you plan what you're talking about? In the last episode, we talked about the deliver the content kind of thing, right? You have to be able to deliver quickly, but this is like, how do you build that strategy and get the buy-in that you need to move forward with the plan, right? Mm-hmm. So Shannon and we were talking in the break part about how we always come down to this and we always think alike. So they might be a little bit twisted, but the truth is that we usually come up with the same 3 things that we really want to talk about. And if you're talking about strategy, then you really have to have a strategy. You have to understand what you want and how you want to get there. And so as you do that, you're thinking about that vision, right? What is our end goal? And do we want to go all the way into the vision statement kind of thing? Yes, sometimes you do. Sometimes it helps. And then how do you get there, right? And that's the roadmap piece of it. So, so let's start with the concept of strategy and how do you define, now that you're in the new role again and you're building out all of this cool stuff, what does strategy mean?
So this is interesting. I asked a former CMO once, how do you define strategy? Because I feel like everybody says it a little bit differently. You know, is this a concrete plan of campaigns that we're running and exact things that we're doing? Is it a little bit more high level? I try to keep it more high level around problems to solve and how we plan to solve them, right? So there's clear problems that need to be solved. There could be multiple ways to solve them. So what are the ways that we're actually going to tackle those things, right? So maybe it's an engagement issue. There could be multiple things that you implement to increase engagement. Where are we going to start? And so I like to think of strategy as what will we do, which by nature also means what will we not do, either ever or now. And if we're not going to do those things ever or now, why is that? And I think that gets into the next point around vision. But what about for you? Sorry.
I think it's the same thing, right? I think that the strategy is the overarching points we're trying to get across. So if it's adoption, if it's engagement, if it is the nitty-gritty details of ticket deflection, right? We really need to understand who our stakeholders are and what problems we need to solve on their behalf, right? Because if they could have solved it, it would have already been taken care of. Well, maybe, but what they're coming to us for is that whole concept again of scale, right? When they're looking at things, they're either looking at them in such levels of detail that there's no way that we can apply it in a bigger way, or they're looking at it at that big forest level, right? And they can't figure out how to make it comprehensive at the tree level, right? There's just too much going on. And one of the things that we are good at in education and in customer marketing is being able to compartmentalize the information in such a way that it tells a story, right? That we're able to work our way through. And I think that's what strategy is, right? Strategy is our story of the things that we want to do as a team, as a part of CX. And
not
the one thing,
so nitty gritty that someone could argue, verbally wrestle with you around the details, but more, can we from here agree that this is our flight path? You know, this is where kind of trajecting over time. Cool. Yeah. And then go like from there, I think then you start and we get more into the more detailed plans, campaigns, roadmaps, things like that.
right. Because the vision, there's always some discussion about, are these the same thing? Right? Is strategy the same as vision?
No. Okay. To me, right, your vision is what's your end goal, right? So you're building with the end in mind, is who is this for? And what do we want to be and do? And maybe what do we not want to do, right? So with your education program, where would you like to ultimately end up? Is there kind of real time and asynchronous learning? Do you have different modalities that you kind of want to introduce? Is this a category creation play? You know, do you want this to be a niche kind of learning place? We have some friends who have some really nerdy niche education programs, or do you want to be a category person like HubSpot, right? HubSpot's come one, come all. If you want to learn about marketing, sales, service, RevOps, customer market, and basically anything now, but there's so much. And I think having that vision helps you to say, this is where I want to get to. So you can start to plan toward that. But the strategy would be, okay, if my 3-5 year vision is that this is what this academy or education program is going to be, this is what this customer marketing program or function could look like. Where do I start? What is my current focus? You know, what are the current problems to solve? Which I think also ties to what is the business ready for? Because there are some things that you might want to do, but that the business is not currently ready for a headcount perspective, a strategy perspective, from a people shifting around the company perspective. Like we have to
or
be
just volume, right? You may not have the volume of action that will let you take this big thing, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, you know what, we have to compress this down into something that's manageable for the size that we are, again, whatever the metric is that you're using to define size, right? The number of employees we have, the number of customers that we have, the number of transactions that we have, right? Or any combination of some of those things. And you have to really be able to say, I know that you want to do this really big thing, but we need to scale it back.
Yeah.
Right. We need to make sure that it's something that we can accomplish. Right. Because I believe that when we're talking about vision and we're talking about strategy, we shouldn't be putting something out there that we know is not going to be able to ever be done. That's self-defeating. And do you find that sometimes when you have to have the conversations with leadership on these things, like they want you, right?
Well, and that's where I think leadership wants to be aspirational, which is great, right? That's the vision. The vision is the big picture, but we're also very clear this is aspirational and it is very much far down the road. Kind of like if this is our roadmap, we're beyond a year out, which means who the heck knows? You know, this is a grand idea, but will it come to pass? I don't know. And I think we're thinking about that. Where do we want to grow into? But the strategy kind of reels it in a little bit and says, if that's where we want to be in 5 years, based on our current capacity, based on our current business objectives, based on our current movements and things happening around the company, based on what other teams are working on and how our work intersects with theirs, because in customer education, customer marketing, our work does intersect so much with other
all the
teams,
time,
which we have to be thinking about, like their input, whether they're SMEs or whether they're helping to market and deliver these programs to people.
Or helping me build my dashboards.
Yes, look, I'm going to time out on dashboards because I could go a little bit.
That's another, separate conversation.
But
that's a
I think
other conversation.
Helping them to see, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. Put it in customer education context. HubSpot Academy did not look like this 10 years ago. It was a webinar. Most of us are basically HubSpot Academy 2012. That's where we are. So we're on track, actually, if we're looking at, what they were doing. But if we know, if that's where we want to be, then we can kind of traject that way. The strategy helps to rein it in a little bit and put it in a little slightly more concrete terms.
So if we kind of think of it as maybe an inverse pyramid kind of thing,
Mhm.
the vision is really our overarching umbrella piece, right?
Mhm.
It's and that's the part we need to tie back to leadership, right? If your leaders are telling you what they want to do, how they want to work with vision, then the vision statements that we put forth in customer marketing and customer education have to align with their vision. If they don't, there is a lesser chance that we will be able to move down to that next level in strategy and put forth plans that tie to our vision, because it is much more difficult to get buy-in, to get money and any other resources we might need if our vision is out of alignment. Right.
And I think you align on the vision. Where do we ultimately see this going? Then you have the strategy in the next 6 to 12 months. How are we working toward that vision, right? I think about this in my own life, side projects that I have. I have big dreams today that looks like calling one person a month. That's how I'm trajecting.
Well, and that's how this happened, right? That's how
Yeah.
this happened, how us being here happened, because this became part of the vision and then the strategy for us to get this information out there, because we couldn't find it from anybody else.
No. Why is
right?
no one talking about this? Okay. So
which leads us to the third level, so that we can start
Yeah.
wrapping it up, because otherwise we'll go on forever. But the
Okay.
third one, of course, is the detail level, right? That's the roadmap.
Yes. And this is where I think it's so interesting, right? And I think about in customer education, if you're leading customer education, you have to speak up that vision and strategy level, and you have to speak down at the detail level, because your team is not going to translate. It literally is language translation of the vision and strategy to what is the work that actually needs to be done. And then also, how do we chunk that work in a way that makes sense, so that we can say to the business, this is what we're working on. This is the time frame, so they know what to expect. Also, so they stop bugging the crap out of us for things that we have planned 3 months from now. But we can actually say, hey, love that you're asking that question. We plan to start working on that in Q3. And you could show them your roadmap.
And it's for me, the fun part in the conversations that I have is somebody will bring up this idea like, well, we'd like to really do this. And I said, that's on the roadmap right now for Q3. I would love for you to start being involved in helping us make those plans as we get ready to talk in more detail about that. And all of a sudden, I have new friends.
Yes. This is so, okay. I did actually do a whole module on road mapping for customer marketing when I was at Proudvocate Base, whatever it is now. But just because I think it's a concept that most people understand, because if you work at a SaaS company, if you have a software product, you have a product roadmap. So your leadership is already used to thinking in this way. But it is a little non-committal, because you really just have a bar that says, for this period of time, we will be working on such and such type of thing. But it allows you to get, again, that high level buy-in of what you're working on when you're working on it. All someone has to look at is a little chart, say, philosophically, I agree with this plan and the direction you're going in. But then it also, I think a lot about how does what we do or not do, what does that communicate to other people and other teams? And when you can say, hey, we're actually going to be working on that in Q3, and I would love to involve you in the process, it communicates confidence. You've got this, you've got a plan, you're a thoughtful, strategic person. It actually makes people in the company want to work with you, because they see that you're thinking ahead, you've got the grand plan, you're making things happen. And so it does, win you a lot of friends and influence people to have that plan.
And I think the challenge is making sure, again, that you're creating a roadmap in digestible pieces. When you get to the roadmap stage, when I have been working with my software teams, I'm not as involved in that side here at TI, but in previous incarnations, the concept is what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. Those are the things that we need to focus on and really try to be concrete with, right? completes at least one thing in that time frame, preferably more than one thing, but really focus on what we can accomplish logistically in that time frame, given the resources that we have.
Mhm.
The piece of, and then again, what happens in the next 6 to 12 and then 12 to 18. And again, if anything past 18 is cloudy and murky and
Yes.
magic 8-ball worthy. But the things that we do in that 3 to 6, those are the ones that we can really get our teams involved with and excited about as we build out that content. But here's the question.
Yes.
What happens when someone comes to you in month 2
Mhm.
and says, we really need this,
Mhm.
and it's nowhere on your roadmap?
Mm. Well, okay. I had a different question just to kind of keep on the road mapping topic is what is the appropriate level of detail for a roadmap, right? So when you're looking 3 to 6 months out, what should that look like? You know, is it we're working on this instructor-led training and this, you know, module of this or this module of a certification? What level of detail are we talking about? Just so people, because I don't want people to think this is, you've got to have this grand plan that you're showcasing. What, you know, if we have those bars, I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
couple of, it's like a little Gantt chart with a couple of sentences that say this is the goal in this Gantt timeline, right? In the 8 weeks of that
Yeah.
project, that
Okay.
little piece of the project. I don't know that it needs to be more than that for public consumption, right? If
Yes.
the guys from support come in and say, what are you working on? Then you know what, go look at the plan.
Mhm.
And you can see what's going on. If you've got any more detailed questions, happy to answer them. But you know, everything's there. I publish mine in my internal newsletter,
Ooh, okay.
right? So they know
Yeah,
my
internal
next,
marketing. Can we please
right?
like topic that for a few?
Yeah, we got it.
We need to
I
talk about
think it's set up to happen in like the
we would
next
already
time
have
around.
this on our
Yeah,
list.
it's on our list. Yeah, it's on the list.
Okay.
But
Roadmap.
so
But
there's
then
that.
saying if it changes, and I think if it changes, this is a conversation we always talk about with prioritization is, okay, these are the things that's on my roadmap. But again, this is why the roadmap is helpful. If someone comes to you and you have no roadmap, you have not communicated to the company your strategy or your roadmap, you have not a lot of ground to stand on when someone comes to you and says, hey, I urgently need you to create whatever, this training, this video, this. Number one, I also think we just need to like time out and say people should stop coming to education and giving them very explicit requests. Okay, we need the problem that you're trying to
Okay.
solve. Stop dictating what video should be created. Maybe that's not even the right format. Leave it to the pros. But beyond that, if you have the roadmap, you can say, okay, we've got these 3 things scheduled for Q3, and the business has indicated that these are the priorities. If you believe that this is a higher priority, what's shifting? And like, who do we need to involve in that conversation? But I do think having that preparation, that roadmap gives
And
you
that's key, right? That's key.
stand on.
It says, these are the priorities that we have all identified are important. If you
Mhm.
believe that your project should be higher than any one of these things, then that's okay. But let's have that discussion. And
Mhm.
I don't mind. Flexibility is part of the job.
Yeah.
But we also need to make sure that we're not saying yes to everyone just because they have deemed it an emergency.
Yes. Yes. And this is where, again, right, if you're doing your strategy right, you're collecting input from stakeholders around the business and you're thinking about the needs of different teams. And then you can also speak to things where you can say, I would really love to do that. What the leadership of your team has said is that you're going to be implementing XYZ. So I think a lot about sales, right? And customer marketing. Sometimes we're teeing stuff up for sales. And I'm thinking about, are they going through some kind of change management? Are they changing their methodology? Have they recently had a change in whether it's staffing at the leadership level or the individual level? Have they recently implemented a new process, system, software? Like we have to consider that when we're rolling out our own things because cognitive load, there's only so much that they can take in at any given time. So if you've also done your homework to collect all that, then you can say, hey, based on those conversations, this is also going to be going on. So I'd be happy to work on something like that. Maybe we should look at a time when there's more bandwidth for the team to consume that or there's more appetite for that to be available.
And I just am putting together a plan myself. And we had this very aggressive timeline. And then we went back and we looked at all of the people that were going to have to participate. And it's like, you know what? This one means that we've got to do these extra 3 or 4 things, which is going to extend all of this out a little bit. So now the timeline is no longer nearly as aggressive, because we want to make sure that everybody has the information that they need to do their part when it becomes their turn to do that internally, let alone what we're going to be pushing out to the customer base.
And we were very clear before we recorded that we are not recommending any models that you should, or any way that you should format your, productivity. But again, like if we were to look at a product team, we're treating education like a product, they do capacity planning. They're looking at story points or sprint points, whatever format they're using, but they're also considering, is Cindy Lou Who over here going to be on vacation for 2 weeks, and that decreases capacity. And if Cindy Lou Who is a subject matter expert, or needs to review something, or needs to push XYZ,
or is a potential bottleneck.
Yeah, right. So we need to think about that in the planning process. And I do think sometimes I know Murphy's Law is like anything that can go wrong will. There's a different law that's like, we think if we're driving somewhere, we're going to hit every green light. There's not going to be an accident in front of us. Nothing bad is going to happen. I could make it in 5 minutes, when realistically it's probably 10, right? And I think
we say in Portland, you can get anywhere in 20 minutes, and everyone knows that's a lie.
You could, it just won't happen.
It just won't happen, right? It's always going to be traffic on I-5 or on 80 or right. There's always going to be something that's in the way. The bridge, there's going to be a bridge lift in the middle of you trying to get across the river, or and that's always going to happen.
So in the middle of the road in front of me today for 3 whole minutes, and of course I did the same thing. I can get there in 10 minutes. BS, Shannon. It takes 15 minutes. You should always. I just need to stop kidding myself. But that all,
but we think that way, right? That we think that way. And so we need to try to be more realistic when we plan, so that.
And again, what are we communicating to other people? And we do want, and I think it's this delicate balance. It's kind of a dance of how do we produce that and get that time to value where people have that confidence in us, but we also are being realistic. And that way we're not burnt out. Our team isn't burnt out, and we're not creating the perception with other people that we never deliver when we said we would, like some other people that we probably work with.
Well, and two, that we have, when I was actually building course content, we used to add an extra 30% in time.
That's so smart.
For that very reason, right? That I would say, right, I know I can do this. If all things are perfect, I can do this in 37 hours.
But we're going to,
and life is never perfect.
No,
it is never perfect. I'm going to get called into meetings. Now I try to schedule it so that once I hit meeting number 4 for the day, my schedule blocks off and nobody else can schedule anything.
Ooh, I need to learn that.
Which is kind of cool, but it doesn't always work. If the CEO comes to you and says, Kristine, I need to meet at 2:00, it's not very often I'm going to say no. And so that kind of thing, then you can build in that extra time. And in some case, what you need to do is figure out what that time is, right? If you initially thought that the project was going to take you, 40 hours or 80 hours or 185,000 hours or whatever the number is, go ahead and make that estimate, and then add, pick a good number.
Yeah, 20,
some people are saying that 20, 25, 30% is really a good place to start. You can always refine it once you have the data, right? Once you say, oh, look.
It probably depends on your company. Are there a lot of people who come in and have opinions? Do you change direction a lot? Are there, I feel like anybody who's worked in education has had a SME who rambles. So you would think 40 minutes, sufficient time to get a brain download. Maybe it takes 2 sessions, but it'll probably be dependent on your business,
and your business and your people, right? Your business and your people. So you have to, but once you start doing that and you really start looking at what those numbers are, then you can get to a very predictive place with it, right? You can say almost to the day, I know this is going to take us X, depending on the modality that we're working with, the people that are a part of this particular project, right? And I know what it's going to take. So So that's the part of the roadmap piece that goes on the downside, right? We talked about how you have to think up and you have to think down for your people and your teams. And I think that once we get to the data-driven detail portion of it, that's what's important.
All right. Okay. So we've talked about strategy, vision. So we're actually going to start vision, strategy, roadmap. We're getting into the details, few tips in there around how the roadmap works. You know, give yourself a little buffer in the timing there, break it down into digestible pieces. So this is awesome. And then we will continue the conversation talking about internal marketing, building up hype with the people in your company, because you need that buy-in at all levels of the company, every department, every team.
Yeah, I think we really need to focus on the definition of change management, because that's all of those things, right?
Yes.
And how do we get everybody involved in a way that is appropriate for them?
All right. So coming to
So that's our thought.
near you, internal marketing, change management. Stay tuned.
Later, guys. Have a good one.